either have excuses or results, but you can't have both. Good morning and welcome to Off the Cuff with your hosts Cedric and Praveen. We have another interesting program for you. We have with us the good MP, Mr. Claudius Moncampo, also known as Toncha or Bounce. Praveen, how was your St. Martin's Day?
It was good. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you celebrated a good St. Martin Day as well. And here we are with another show of the Cups. We started 11 o'clock sharp, just for a change. And we have our respected guest with us, which is Mr. Claudius Moncampo. So we're going to leave him the floor now so he can make his own
I want to ask the good MP a question before he goes in. I want to know from the good Bounce how the country running Bounce.
Country runs good from the perspective that you look at it. We can look at it from any perspective and we can find fault. Or we can look from the positive perspective and find hope. It's truly how you look at it. And, saying that, Cedric and Praveen, I would want to say good morning to you all. Thank you for having me here. And to the followers of TVCARIB on the live stream, a pleasant good morning, and I hope everyone had a wonderful St. Martin Day.
Thank you. So,
you want to start right off?
I want to dive into what the good MP just said on that point. It's a state of mind. It's how you move your country forward in terms of perspective, how you see things and how you approach things. And with that type of mindset, there's only a positive and good outcome for this country. So, having said that, let me dive into my first question because of the good MP's history in the organization of ROMI with regards to the motion that was passed in terms of a policy. What are some of the elements that you would like to see coming back into that land policy? Because, of course, I believe your faction also supported the motion. What are some of the key elements you would like to see present in that policy that is supposed to be presented by the minister?
I think the most important thing in the policy is that there's fairness. When does a application become null and void? So you have a data bank right now with thousands of people that have requested from back in the 70s a piece of land. Now, most of those applications are 50 years old. Those people are now 70, 80 years old, most probably. So they're not really applications that should be on file anymore. I think the first thing you have to do is do a cleanup to see what's still really relevant and what's not relevant. That's very important because we have this nasty way of always saying, oh, they got thousands of applications there. But are those thousands of people in the position to build a home? You see, what we have to agree to, if we give a parcel of land and the policy says within 6 months you got to start building, that means you should have been in the position to build when you got that land. You see now that after 30 years, people are selling a piece of land and making millions on it. That was not what domain land was never entitled to. Yes, that's what domain land has been used for. But I don't believe that the true meaning of granting you a piece of land was to enrich you, but more to help you start on a good footing in life by not having to buy a piece of land. I think you want to start seeing this back in the policy, but that's a part of existing policy for enforcement. But like what is happening now that, for example, when you look at the Vineyard Heights, that there was a cutoff date done by the minister. When he came into office, he said, okay, applications from this date moving forward, I will attend to. That is a gross neglect to continuance in government. Right. And this is what the policy has to protect against. That a minister cannot decide which applications are valid and which are not valid. The policy has to do that. So it isn't des minister, but it is a policy anchored in maybe an LBHAM or whatever.
So things like, for example, when I'm speaking, the things that come to mind that would be in such a policy, for example, is if you're ready to build, so you would have to show me some engagement with the bank, some pre-financing, or those type of things you're looking at?
Again, not necessarily, because banks in St. Martin are very funny. You go and ask them for a loan. You better show them what your grandmother owned when she was alive. So, no, I'm very cautious with going that direction because the banks have a very strange way of doing risk assessments and evaluations of the ability of a person. So I don't want to go there. I don't want to put this that the bank will decide who gets a parcel of land.
Okay.
But if you have a good income, you can prove that you're not in debt or whatever. So you can listen, if you're making a few $1,000 a month, you can start building your home, you know. It isn't going to be built in 6 months, but maybe in 3 years.
Exactly.
So I am saying don't put the onus of having a bag of money as the reason to get a parcel of land. But do put the onus that you must be able to stand.
Okay, agreed. One more point that you hit on is the selling of acquired. It's not selling the land, but you know it sort of becomes speculation with land. People build a small or something on the land, then sell the land, including that little structure. Should there be some policy in place as to who you can sell the land to? Because it becomes speculation, and then the highest bidder wins. And we see the limitations of financing, etc., for locals.
You'd have to adjust the law. You'd have to adjust the law because the law goes two ways to my knowledge. One, for you to sell, you have to ask permission first of all. So it isn't that you can just pick up and sell your land, you know. You still have to ask the government permission. Since 2013, I believe they changed it. Listen, in the old deeds, you didn't even have to ask permission. You didn't even have to build on it to sell it. That's why they used to be sold. That changed over time. They said, no, you got to build on it. You can't sell blote eigendom. Today, you can't sell a blank piece of land.
No.
You must sell it with something on it. That's why I was questioning Beacon Hill. Why would you sell a blank piece of land? Yes, you sell a house on it, I understand. But a garage is not a part of a house. Garage is a garage. You put a car there.
Yes.
So how are you selling that? That's why my questions were anchored that way. Because the law, in my opinion, doesn't allow you to sell a blank piece of land.
No.
So that piece of law exists already. Now, where does it come in the selling of the land is the speculation of the price. Remember, you pay ERPA canon based on, for example, 50 guilders a square meters in South Reward. Yet, if Mr. Ortega is to sell his house tomorrow in South Reward, he's selling the land at 50 guilders, he can sell it at $100. So you got 1,000 square meters,
Correct.
first he charging you $100. So it's $100,000 for the land, and then you
the
can add on the house.
Yeah.
Correct.
When you go by the notary, that's how they also calculate the transaction tax that the government collects. Now, the discussion is this. I gave you a piece of land that was valued 50 guilders per square meter. You want to sell that right because that's what you're doing. You're selling a judicial right that the government gave you. The maximum you should actually be able to get is the value of the house. Mm-hmm. And if you sell the right, you're selling it at the 50 guilders per square meter. That's what you should be able to do. Mm-hmm. This is where the law is a little unclear, in my opinion, because that verrekening is not clear. And maybe that should become clearer in the policy as we move on. But again, it is something to be discussed.
Some great observations, and with this land issue, it has always been, in my opinion, too much at the whim of the Tundatide commissioners and now the ministers. There is no real objectivity in it, and it becomes seemingly unfair. So with this situation having blown up in a negative light, when you look at perspective, we are now forced to deal with a situation that can create clarity in the future. So thank you for those points. Praveen?
Yeah, so respected MP, I'm just going to move on to the next issue, which is a little bit connected with the long lease land, and that is concerning the claims that have been recently made by the Richardsons of this. Now, they are claiming a new right to the land that has yet to be proven by them in the court. What do you make of this?
Look, you know, the government did nothing wrong in this case. The government acquired land that was being used by, I believe it was Mr. Henson, from back in the 80s. The Bancampa family lost the land where Mr. Henson was on in a court case back in the 80s. The heirs of the Bancampers. I was one of them. They said, no, that land belongs to Ann Richardson. Good. That's where it stopped. We moved on. We did our stuff over there. Mrs. Richardson died, and the curator was the notary. I believe it was Notary Geisberta. And he took Mr. Henson to courts because he believed that Mr. Henson was occupying the land illegally, as he was not an heir of the Richardson, of Ann Richardson, the deceased Ann Richardson. What happened then was that Mr. Henson lost the first case in first instance. He appealed, and I believe in 2018, he lost that appeal also. It is at that point in time that the courts granted the land to the government of St. Martin, to the country, the state, because that's the onlyest other person that by law is eligible to the land, because there was no will, there was nothing. A notice was placed, if it is correct, to call upon all heirs. But remember, for the courts to reach to a decision that there were no heirs, there had to be some sort of prerequisite done by the notary or whomever else is involved. I don't want to believe that this just happened, that the courts decided, because if the courts did that, then the courts have a problem. Well, St. Martin has a problem, because anytime the courts make a mistake and anybody got to get paid, it's the country that pays. It comes out of the country's coffers. The courts don't have no coffers to pay anybody. So is the claim legit? Any claim is legit. This is civil courts we're talking about, not a criminal case. Nobody did anything criminally. The country got a parcel of land, so the minister is completely in his right when he says the country owns the property.
As of now, that is correct.
At this point in time, that's correct. One of the reasons I supported the motion is exactly because of this claim. I said, be careful with what's happening here. Civil courts can tomorrow go elsewhere if they can show that these are legitimate heirs. Once this is proven that these are legitimate heirs, the courts is going to have to revisit its position. Now, there are going to be a few things that play a role. Was the notice placed? Did you react? Did you not react? Why didn't you react? Or was no notice placed? You knew of nothing? Because, let's be honest, why would a courts in Curacao grant somebody the right to go and handle this case? I found that strange, because the property is not in Curacao. So you're talking about properties in St. Martin, and the courts of first instance in St. Martin should have done that. But again, court systems have different ways of working. It's a common court, so maybe possible. I'm not going to say no to that. But that alone should put you on your guard moving forward with how you deal with Vineyard Heights. You know, I'm not saying something was done wrong. I'm saying, please don't be naive. Don't leave ego take over. Handle this thing with the necessary caution and ensure that at all times the government is legally well covered, so that at the end of the day you don't end up with a big bill.
Just a quick follow-up on this. The claims on this particular land or this area has been since approximately 2013, 2014 in some kind of a way. Now, what I understand is that we need to separate this claim from the issue of the applicants.
Yes.
So now, these are two different issues completely.
Totally.
Now, let's just consider for just a moment that if the land turns out to be in the ownership of the heirs of the Richardson, for example, or the court grants them the claim, then what happens to the previous applicants that were given the land? And now there are another set of applicants that have been awarded that lands. So in this case now, what exactly will be the situation in terms of government?
You need to make two separations, because you added two applicants in the same pot.
Okay.
You have the ombudsman case that is handling the two sets of applicants, the 50 or 54 versus the 25.
Correct.
That is an internal matter. That the government has a liability to deal with. Continuance in government, that's where the ombudsman went. That has nothing to do if the heirs win. If the heirs win, the government doesn't own the land anymore. So it's not their fault. You can't hold me liable for something that you gave me in
But
good
what about
faith
the previous?
makes no difference.
No,
None
no.
of the two, because you got the land in good faith from the courts, in my opinion.
Right.
Again, this is my personal opinion. You can't now tell me that I gave it away illegally. No,
Illegally.
I gave it away the right way. If you ask me between the 54 and the 25, if that was the right way, that's a different discussion that the Ombudsman is handling now, and I prefer to leave the high councils get out of this before I give as a politician.
I guess we
my
have to
personal
wait
opinion.
But the
Till early
situation,
December.
the situation is, as is made clear now, is that we need to first resolve who the rightful owners
Owners.
of this
Correct.
property is
That's what we asked for.
before we even consider the 25 versus 50. So
Exactly.
we got to take a couple of steps back before we start to move
That's
forward.
my personal opinion. I think that's how you safeguard the government
I would
from
agree.
any kind of craziness.
I would
moving
agree.
forward.
Seeing the history and how that was explained, I think the best suggestion is right now get some fundamental clarity on the ownership of this land
That's the
before
first step, yeah.
before we can proceed with any other steps. We are the next subject we're going to talk about is the CFT. Now, before we go into the CFT, let me state this: I find it very confusing and sort of undermining that we have a parliament and the budget is a law that is ratified and passed by parliament, and then that there's an external body, whether it's a CFT, whether it's a central bank from of whoever, overriding or having such influence after the fact that they actually sort of controlling the budget and how it functions. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, at a certain point, I think the responsibility lies and is with Parliament, and that's where the buck should end. That's just my opinion. That's a stage in development, in growth, and responsibility. The fact that we have this entity irks me. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, a few things. The CFT is an establishment made up in a consensus law. The RFT law is a consensus law. It wasn't just that Holland imposed it, we agreed
No,
on it.
yes.
And the CFT's task is to ensure that the budget is properly put together, balanced, and executed correctly. Now, this piece about the CFT, and I told it to Mr. Gradius when he was in the last closed door meeting, that he has to know his place. The CFT has no authority, no jurisdiction to tell Parliament what to do with the budget. When Parliament approves the budget, he cannot say, well, I want this and this change. That's not your authority.
It's an advisory
The
body.
problem is
Okay,
this.
good.
The problem is
Okay,
this.
good. Let's bring clarity.
We always put our tail between our legs and run, because the next thing that will happen is his task as CFT, and I say his task because as chairman, he has the ultimate word, not the committee. Remember back in the day when the Curacao and the Samaritan member said we should give them grants? He said absolutely not. Knopf said it's loans, and we got loans for liquidity support. His word was final. That's also how it's described in the law. But to take it back a step a minute, you have to understand that the government understands clearly that when he reports to the
State Secretary.
Rijksministeraat, no, to
Okay.
the Rijksministeraat,
Okay.
Knopf doesn't decide. The Rijksministeraat decide where our Minister Plenipotentiary is sitting. He goes there and says the St. Martin budget is no good. Bam, 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 bam. What will they do? Listen, adjust this, or you get an instruction in accordance to Article 43, Sub 2. I am going to give you an instruction, like what they are planning to do with Aruba right now, or with Curacao right now. You see, so this is where the scare comes in. And what do? Then we change and we make the budget to the amen of the CFT, with the consequences, for example, that capital expenditures that we put on the budget are never used. You know how often the former ministers have asked to build a prison? And it was taken off the budget by CFT, until one minister was bold enough to say, well, One of these days, it can become your responsibility. You all gonna have to build it. And when did it become an issue? When there was a claim at the Human Rights Court, and the Dutch got slapped not once but twice. Now suddenly they made 20 million euros available to start building a prison. So you see, you have to look at it in the holistical picture. The CFT have a job to do. I have no issue with them doing their job. The CFT will be moved and gone once we have 3 consecutive balanced budget. The CFT said if all is well, by 2023, our first budget will be balanced. So 23, 24, 25. If we have them, they're gone. In 2026, there will be no CFT needed. That's the agreements we made. We have to learn to be financially responsible moving forward on how we do things. And I hope that the government and the governments to be take this serious.
Just to follow up on that, now CFT at the same time has, as we know, the 2021 budget was adopted around September 9th, September 10th, which is actually a bit, it is delayed. Now, CFT has also advised for us to adopt the current budget timely. And they have also advised in uncertain terms that we need to limit our expenditure and work on increasing our tax compliance. So, do you have any information concerning the current budget? How is Parliament reacting to the delay of it? Obviously, there are, I guess, there are a lot of demands for it, but when do you see the budget coming to the floor of the Parliament?
If I followed what the minister said, I believe the 3rd or 4th week of November, we should be getting budget 2022. It is, I believe, it went already to CFT, it went to the Raad van Advies, Council of Advice, and once that's finished, the governor will present it to us, and we will take it from there. They are asking that the budget is passed by the 15th of December. Budget 2022 is a straightforward budget. In my opinion, there are not going to be any strange things in it because there is no money, first of all. Second, the country packages must be laid down in the budget. So again, CFT talking about cutting more expenses. You cannot cut what there isn't. You can't cut no more. If there's no fat to cut, you can't. Then you're cutting skin. And you got to be careful then, because when you start to take out the flesh out of a human being, you're going to kill the human being, you're going to kill the apparatus. So I think they sometimes have to be a little understanding in the situation the country finds itself into. Tax compliance, we could have been tax compliance, most probably already, partially. It wasn't St. Martin's government that believed that we should have taken out the whole tax restructuring out of the trust fund and go and put it in a to-be-made cohort that still don't exist a year and a half later. That was the Dutch. That was also on the advice of the CFT and them. Yes. So the hypocrites got to come forward and say, mea culpa, I made the mistake as CFT. But they don't do that. They say, oh, the government this and the government that and the parliament. Listen. CFT have nothing to tell me. I don't report as a parliamentarian to the CFT, nor does the Parliament of St. Martin. The government of St. Martin has a partnership in discussing with CFT. CFT has an obligation to inform the Parliament of their findings. They have an obligation. That they want to do it behind closed doors, I have no issue with that. But it isn't that I have an obligation to do what they tell me. Absolutely not. I took an oath.
A quick follow-up on that. So when, I guess it was last year, when we were kind of having an argument with the liquidity support, and then I think the finance ministry, they decided to float a bond, and it was negatively advised by the CFT. Now, in your opinion, was there an appetite for this bond? And if there was, what do you think are the reasons that we drew back from that floating of the bond? Again, what role CFT had to play?
Was there an appetite? Sure there was. The central bank is the one that did the study to float the bond. The central bank told the government of St. Martin there's an appetite for 75 million guilders. The different entities that were involved that were going to buy into this were there. Until suddenly the CFT jumps up and says, it's an illegal bond floated. So you're telling me the central bank don't know what they're doing? That's what you're telling me. You got to be crazy. You see what happened? They made a mistake. The Dutch made a mistake and allowed the bond to be floated by the central bank. And then they sent their little watchdog, CFT, to go and talk on the market as if it, yes. And that's when you see groups that in this community, supposed to be for this community, pulled the plug on the minister. And the minister didn't want no fight, had no way out, and pulled back the bond.
And we needed the liquidity, of course.
Yes.
So there was a false perception created, basically.
Yes,
that
the CFT lied about what they were saying. It's that simple. You see, like I said, what we do, we drop our tails in our backside and we run because we don't want confrontation. But you know what? If we ever want to become a country, we're going to have to sometimes stand up and say what we have to say. I'm a person that I'm not very liked when it comes to certain things with the Dutch because I'm not going to argue with them emotional. No. I'm going to rationally slap you in your face with the facts. And then you tell me I'm wrong.
But then isn't that the major role of the executive branch to do that?
No, the executive branch have their role to do.
But as Parliament,
they have the government. As Parliament, I am overseeing the works of government.
Yes.
So if I realize that they did something right and they're being pressured because at the end of the day, you either do it my way or you get no money and your people can starve, and I hope that they have riots and robberies so we could come in and take over the country. If that's your plan, then just say so.
I was just thinking the same thing. It seems like the CFT sabotaging St. Martin and its progress. Look, to a certain extent.
There are a few things you must always remember. If I control your justice and I control your finances, I control your country. Make no mistake with that. And they control both right now.
That's a fact. When we come back from the break, because of course half an hour flies by like that, I have a couple of questions with regards to investment in the infrastructure. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can always call in. We'll give you the number when we come back. So we're going to a commercial break. We'll be back shortly.
See you soon.
Esta semana el show de Naila y Allen llega desde un baby shower, donde tendremos una DJ especial. Naila está, Allen está haciendo de las suyas. El viejito Salomón viene con una nueva historia, más consejitos con Rayito Celestial, magia de la buena con André Magic y todas las ocurrencias de nuestros amiguitos Naila y Allen para que todos disfrutemos desde la comodidad de nuestro hogar este fin de semana. El show de Naila y Allen, sábados y domingos a las 4 de la tarde por TV Carib, TV Carib Latino y todas nuestras redes sociales.
Welcome to the Late Night Show. Hope everything is okay. Hope everything is all right. I'm your host, Andrew. But why are you going to only hear that? Okay, so nobody is excited. Okay, let me try this again. Welcome to the Late Night Show. I'm your host, Andrew Dick. Welcome to the Late Night Show. I'm your host, Andrew Dick. Are you just hating? I just hating. I started the program again so that everybody could have fun, especially the politicians. They're waiting to see me. They can't wait to see the Late Night Show, right? Anyway, the Late Night Show restarts season 3. Make sure you tune in. It's gonna be awesome.
Welcome
this
back.
is Off the Cuff with Cedric and Praveen, our special guest, the good MP, Mr. Boncampo. One of the questions I want to ask, because we've seen it, it's becoming obvious, and you know this is your area of expertise, the potholes. And it's becoming bad, and it's not, you know, we always complain about potholes, but we always have seen big action being taken where certain areas are being affected. Are we investing enough in infrastructure, and is the monies available? So, you know, we're going to jump on the minister and say he busy doing everything else except fixing the road. And so, but let's be honest, that costs a lot of money. A big chunk of the budget goes to infrastructure, and we haven't been seeing that. Is that because of the financial situation that the government and the island is in?
A few things. I come from public works. I come from infrastructure. I was there for 20 odd years. And what we have done over the past 5 years is contractualize a lot of work. When it comes to garbage collection, sewage, landfill, trenches, whatever, we contractualize it so we don't lose the money. They're obligated to give you that budget the next year. So the open-ended budgets that you have, which one of them is road repairs, and normally there's about $2.5 million per year made available to not only maintain the roads, but also to put in new sections. Because if I overlay, I'll give an example. When you look at, for example, the Sucker Garden Road, a good piece of that was overlaid. That's maintenance. That comes out of the maintenance budget. What we do, what they normally should do is they have a tender for asphalt. You just have a tender. You can have one publicly, or you can have one on invitation, since there's only one person that does asphalt on the island. And you try to come to a consensus price on how much you would charge me per metric ton of asphalt placed. Now, with that, let's say if you put $1 million available, it means that that's the money you have for the year. Now, potholes are created normally because water comes up from the bottom. The road has a foundation. It means the foundation is deteriorated and water comes up. It pushes out the asphalt that you put in. So sometimes you can put in asphalt, a good rainfall falls,
back up.
And guess what? That hole is back. There are a few places in St. Martin that are known for this. It means the structure of the road has deteriorated beyond repair. It means you have to take out the foundation and put in a new foundation. That is expensive. I don't think, personally, knowing the budget that there is, that they have that ability this year to do that. I don't even think they'll have the ability next year to do it. But the patch does help. When you look at Front Street, for example, that's a whole different story, because that affects the economy of this country directly. Now, I believe that preference must be given, and works, maybe certain works that we do within the ministry must be shifted. We have to reshift. It is nice to invest money now in Link 6, the east-west connection, and you leave Front Street in the state it is. Or you go to the tourism office and say, do you have any monies that remained for your marketing? Let's put it into Front Street. It is going to cost about $500,000 to $600,000 to pull out the bricks, pull out the sand, recompact it, and place a new layer of asphalt, not bricks. As long as we don't have money to maintain the bricks, spray them, keep them watertight, they are going to wobble, because that's a sandbank you're on. And so the water movement is going to be a problem.
Seen on social media from the week, our limited tourism that we have these last couple of weeks, a lady on a Segway right in front of the courthouse, how symbolic, take a hard fall because of the roadway there. So again, you know what is good about having these discussions, because we tend to, the government ain't fixing the road, we see a big iron plan go down, and then because of one issue, we tend to carry it on, and we need to stay balanced, we need to stay realistic. With limited funds, I would agree that you're going to invest, especially in the areas where our economy is being stimulated, and then it would seem as if the neighborhoods and so on are being addressed. It's a priority.
You got to look at it. It goes further, Cedric. The government has so much money. That's it. Now, you budget money in certain ways, but that doesn't mean to say that you have that money. Remember, a budget is just a paper with numbers on it.
Exactly.
If you have an X amount of money alone, because every month you see what's coming in, then it is more than normal that the Minister of Finance, and this is how it used to work, and I'm sure it works this way now, tells you, listen, you can only spend so much money this month. I can only pay so much money on bills this month. So take off your contractual bills first, and then I'll tell you what stays over. You understand? And with that, you make choices. When we have all these bad weathers, and you see machines out there cleaning up, guess what?
That costs money.
That has to be paid. It was never planned.
Yep.
Because you put a calamity post, but you hope never to use
Never
it.
to use it.
But now, because you used it, you're going to lose money elsewhere to use. And this is a reality for the government. And the Ministry of Romi, we work outside. So it's going to hit us hardest.
I just have a follow-up on that because I was just reading yesterday. Actually, there are some Japanese engineers who are trying something out in the Middle East because of the higher temperatures in the Middle East. Basically, what they're doing is they know the logic that the temperature of the dark asphalt is roughly 20 degrees Celsius more higher than the actual temperature because of the the black attracts and radiates heat. So basically, what they are doing in patches now is they are painting the asphalt on top with a blue kind. You could call it paint, but actually it reduces roughly the temperatures lower. Between 15 to 20 degrees, and also it increases the service life of the coating on the top. Do you think that since obviously in the Caribbean we will be on the forefront of
Climate change.
that is something that we should look into, try it out in phases, and then see how it goes?
I think it's a good thing. Look, these are new technologies and solutions that we look for based on the world we live in today. Look, I think St. Martin has much bigger issues to deal with before we get to dropping a coat of paint on asphalt. We're having a problem with the road has lost its lifespan.
Integrity.
And the integrity of the road is gone, so you can paint on top, but again, that is taking water to the sea, in my humble opinion. I think we first have to get all the utility companies in line in one trench so that we stop breaking open the road every minute. And then maybe put in a good base in the road, and a base that is made up of concrete. Concrete goes there for 30 years, and if it's a base, you go and look at any road they build in other countries, you notice they use that concrete base, and the layer on top of asphalt, if it peels off,
Then you still have a
concrete
concrete
base.
base,
yes.
So it helps the lifespan of the road significantly. In the past, we used to have a lot of concrete roads, and then we placed asphalt over them, and you notice those roads stay reasonably well.
Well, yeah.
The follow-ups, any follow-ups?
No, I want just one general question in terms of St. Martin, and again, we are in such a difficult position based on after Irma going into a pandemic, so priorities and choices have to be made in terms of where you focus your attention as a government. But are we overall, are the priorities of our government in the right place?
I honestly believe yes. And when I say yes, it's because we're dealing with the country packages. We agree to the country packages. In general, we need reform. Let us not mince no words about that. This country needs reform. We have failed too often to do the right thing at the right time, which has now given us and placed us in a very awkward position that we are running behind, we are lagging behind in a lot of things. Doesn't mean to say that we can't overcome them. We just have to put all our noses in the same direction, and that's why I said political stability is extremely important for this country. We need to have political stability in St. Martin. No new throwing down governments and all this craziness. You don't need to be in government coalition to govern this country.
Nope.
I am Team St. Martin. If it's good, I support. If it's bad, I turn it down and I come with a proposal to rectify or fix, move forward. But I think the government in general is on the right path. I'm not going to say, because politically that sounds too good for. No. Look, under the circumstances that we are in, I believe we are doing what's best for this country. Are we doing everything in the order it should be done, that can be debated. Because again, like I said, perspective is from whichever angle you want to take it. You know, I always tell them, I'll give you an example. You can remember the three laws, the three controversial laws, the Constitutional Court decision? Well, let me give you a simple something. Were the laws legal? No, they were not. No. Don't confuse. The Constitutional Court said, I agree with what the government did.
However,
because it was a crisis, and crisis trumps law.
Yes.
This is fundamental to understand. Note breaks wet.
No.
This is fundamental. So they said, constitutionally, the government didn't do nothing wrong with Article 15 and 16.
17.
And I'm saying, but wait a minute. Article 16 speaks of equality, right? When you are told no cuts are going to be made in the following groups, especially the justice. But where's the equality then? Because you are setting that as a condition. And what did the Constitutional Court say? Very, very smart. Look, St. Martin found itself in a very, very precarious situation, and to get money, they had to adhere to the conditions. Wrong. That's not true. They never allowed St. Martin to look for money in the market. You blocked my bond.
They block our bond.
So please, don't take everybody for a fool.
You create a situation where
I understand the judgment, but I do not agree with it. I have some serious remarks on the side, because you cannot do these things. You talk about in the law, and this is the government's fault, and I am part of that because I overlooked it. Any company that is subsidized or works for government or is owned by government or does any execution of a tax for government, and civil servants themselves are all subject to 12.5%. Now, let me ask you a simple question. You have a company, and I had this discussion, so that's why I can talk about it. They execute a job for government. GB does, BTP does, Cadastre does, TLM does, Airport does, Harbour does. Some have a concession, and some don't. I think Cadastre does not have a concession. They just execute the cadastral works for them. They don't pay government a cent either, and government doesn't subsidize them either. The company does well, but the company got to cut 12.5% of the salary of the employees. Give me one valid reason. And don't tell me solidarity, please, because that's utter nonsense. That is the dumbest word that the state secretary ever used. We are in solidarity. We are not in solidarity.
No, we're not.
You are crippling people in St. Martin by telling them they must take a salary cut, when, guess what? The government ain't getting the money, the company keeping the money. You tell the school boards, listen carefully to this, and go back and research it. You tell the school boards, because they're subsidized, that they got to cut 12.5%. The government is not authorized to cut their subsidy.
No.
Exactly. So the school board is going to get richer by 12.5% if they cut the salary of the employees. I think there was a school board chairman said, listen, just keep 10% and give us our money. And we're going to do what we got to do. A school board chairman said that. Cut it with 10% and give us our money.
There you go.
And we're going to decide, if I decide to buy less books, if I decide to buy cheaper benches, if I decide not to give breakfast in the morning, they're going to package that money that way. You can't tell them that. No, suddenly, no, but we didn't mean that. What did you mean? You see, this is the problem we have when we accept conditions, and I, as a parliamentarian, I will take fault too, because we didn't go deep enough. I was against them in the sense that they are open-ended. It was an open-ended something, and I asked them to please put in a time span that you can check. And even there, the courts, the Constitutional Court played a game. Well, they got hidden messages. Listen, there's no message. You're a court, for God's sakes. Tell me who decides when the crisis is over.
Yeah, how is that decided?
Who decides that? Is that the Dutch government? Is that the CFT? Is that the Minister of Finance? Is that the government of Sumatra? Is that the
Well,
Ombudsman? Is it the Parliament? Whom is it?
World Health Organization.
let
Yeah,
me-
this is crazy.
let me-
When do we decide the worldwide pandemic is
You know,
over
what
and
the,
it doesn't
listen,
affect us?
what the
anymore?
Constitutional Court showed us in this verdict is sometimes it's best not to have one. I am not saying they're no good, don't misunderstand me.
No.
But if you're going to answer on constitutional matters, then answer them. And don't leave it open-ended, because there's no appeal on the verdict. So you left an open-ended
Final
verdict
decision, yeah.
for interpretation across the board. That's wrong.
Doesn't create more
That's wrong.
confusion.
Let me follow this up quickly. Can we interpret the verdict to be very general, first of all? It's
Too general.
Very generalized. What question comes to mind is, there are two questions basically that I wanted to ask you. First, that you were one of the MPs that actually questioned the temporary nature of the
Yes.
of the cuts or the national ordinances, and you asked on the floor of the parliament to have it reviewed. I think it was 6 months.
Every 6 months, yes.
And then also you also questioned the temporary nature of these cuts. Now, in the case of this verdict, the crisis basically here, we would consider it to be the pandemic. Now, the general worldwide organization that decides, okay, let's say the World Health Organization says in February or in March, and I think we are getting towards this, they say, okay, more than 6 billion people have been vaccinated, so we can easily say that this pandemic is now an endemic. When that is done, what happens to the temporary nature of these cuts? Because the crisis normally on which these cuts were based are practically said to be over by the World Health Organization. So there is no more pandemic.
Two things.
Where the money gonna come from?
No. There are two things
No,
here.
but-
There are two things here. Remember, the IMF said, listen, this year your economy is going to grow with 4%.
yes.
Next year, we
15%.
anticipate 15%. That's 19%. Our economy collapsed with 23% going back. So we are short 4% someplace. Yet the economy 12.5%. So I like what Aruba is doing. What Aruba did is Aruba is preparing now a proposal to cut in 2022, cut back the salaries with 6.5% alone. So 6.25%, sorry. So from 12.5% to 6.25%. And in 2023, bring it back to zero so that people get their full salaries again. That's their proposal, and I think it's a proposal that the government of St. Martin should consider to have a chit chat with the Prime Minister of Aruba and the one of Curacao. I know they just had a tripartite among each other in Aruba, so I hope that was one of the things that was discussed and review how you move forward. Look, we are not out of the neck of the woods yet. We are going to need some liquidity support, I am sure, in the first quarter of 2022 to close it off, to make it complete again. But St. Martin is going to come back. St. Martin's
Agreed.
tourism is taking off again. Cruise ships are coming back. I think we are going to get back to pre-pandemic measures by mid-year, third quarter 2022. I think we're going to be there. I am an optimist, not a pessimist. I try to be as honest as I see it. But again, we're not out of the woods. I don't believe everything should be turned back come January 1st, but I think we should also look at it seriously and ensure that there's a glimmer of hope for those that are suffering. You know, you got to be honest. The private sector also took a serious beating, and the help that was given to them was mediocre because it was strictly salaries. You never helped them with their utilities, their rent, and all those other things, which in Holland, Sabre Station, all those places was done. But we talk about equality. There is no equality in this equation, and I keep saying it. As long as we are ignorant enough to believe that we are being treated equally, then we are never going to be in the same playing field. What we have to do is we have to ensure that we take care of ourselves. And if you want to put conditions on me, and you want to come here and take over, it right at the airport, land, come and pay. What are you going to pay? You see, when you take over, you're going to be responsible for everything. What's CFT do now suddenly? They gone off by SNV, because now they're looking for the health. They want to make sure that they pull in the health, and they say A, B, C, D. And I agree, we have a serious problem over there. But you know what? Let's deal with it the right way. You're going to increase the margin of who all can be covered by the SNV. I like that. But let's also agree that all those insured got to pay for their families. Because right now, I'm insured, my wife, my kids, and everybody, you, everyone. The problem is this. This is not something that the Samaritan government created. This is something that we took over from the Netherlands until these days, when they decided to insure the whole family, but never charged for the whole family. And it was good for the first 10, 15 years, but as the population gets older and as the population increases, this is going to be a serious problem, as that we can't hold up with this. So you're going to have to start charging for the family, just like how it is done in every other place. Another thing that we can do to make money here is collect for garbage, collect for sewage. We're the onlyest country in the kingdom that doesn't do that. I come out of public works. I can tell you sitting right here, if we charge 25 guilders per month for garbage collection per household, and for businesses between 50 to 100, and if you're a big business like a Carrefour or a hotel, the price is different, and it is calculated based on your consumption and volumes and stuff. You will make just on garbage any place around 10 million to 12 million a year. If you go to sewage and you charge 15 guilders a month, not 25, 15. Again, you have 22,000 water and electricity connections by GB.
That's 22,000 sewage.
Just do the math. Do the math. Those are residential. Then you got businesses.
Then you got businesses, exactly.
Do the math. Listen, I can look at water consumption versus sewage.
Same.
I use 18,000 tons of water a day. The body takes so much. The rest going someplace.
That's about 15 to 16.
120 liters of water I use a day, with showering and drinking.
Most of it is waste.
Correct. The balance is waste.
Most of it.
So if I take 60,000 people and 120 liters, that's what, 7.2 tons.
Yeah.
The other 11 tons going someplace else.
So how can we get this into effect?
The law for sewage is there. It's a matter of signing it. The law for the garbage can be passed tomorrow in the waste ordinance.
You're waiting on the
They are not popular
branch?
decisions.
You listen to your friend.
Which
Cedric.
politician going
No
to stand up and
politician
take that decision?
wants. Listen, it has always
be
been a
honest.
problem, and I'll be honest with you. It's unfortunate because I believe it would have been to the betterment of this country. That 15 million we can collect on waste and sewage per year would have taken a significant brunt off of government, one, or for my part, take the waste collection, take the sewage collection, put it in a company, an NV, like they do in Curacao, like they do in Aruba, and you don't want to pay for garbage? Fine, you get a fine. Got an inspector to come across, you have a bin by your house, it must have a number on it. In Aruba, my cousin, pays 25 guilders for garbage. Collection is once a week. And we scream here when they collect 3 times a week. We are not serious.
And free.
We are spoiled. And that's why we find ourselves sometimes on the shitty end of the stick. Where the Dutch said, but you are serious. You do not need sand. And they're right. Listen, charity starts at home, but responsibility also starts at home.
I think that's a very good idea, and I think the government should implement it right away.
And I can concur because, of course, I come out of the environmental background with sewage, etc. And nowhere in the world, it's just a tax.
That's an additional, what, 12 million?
They put it on your utility bill,
Exactly.
and it's collected via that means, and everybody's happy. The service is provided. What you're going to get is you're going to get better quality, because now as a company, I'm responsible to answer to government because I'm providing them with a service. It works in everybody's interest. But to tell the Samaritan population, you are going to charge them 75 guilders more a month, is not a very popular political decision. And And let's face it, that's why a lot of these decisions are made. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we come into the end of this show again way too fast as expected. 1 hour with the great MP would have been too short. He has to leave, but this gives us space to invite him back because there's a lot more we can talk about and should talk about in balance. Both feet on the ground, real conversation. There is no biasness. The good gentleman understands when it's time to politic and when it's time to lead, and that's one of the things I appreciate about Mr. Boncampo, the balanced approach to everything. So it has been an honor for me to have him in the program. Praveen?
Again, we are running short of time as always. It was really interesting to talk to you, Honorable MP, and once again, we could not finish, so we will happily invite you once more. I have to say that garbage collection and a charge on the garbage collection and the sewage, I think it's a brilliant idea, and hey, we need the money. The coffers needs the money.
Any
closing comments, sir?
First of all, thank you both for having me here. Like I told you, Praveen, I like the program. I looked at the one from Ray, and I liked it because it was straightforward. There's no wishy-washy. You know, I don't like that. I don't believe in that. I made a promise to myself when I got into politics that I was going to try to make a difference, and you make a difference by being honest about the matters and inform the people accordingly. Coming out of the service world, I've been in the Alliance for 30 years. You know, I understand what it means to see people in distress and try to do the best you can with what you have. And that's the same thing that I approach the country with. Try to help the people in the country with as much as we can with what we have. Don't promise them fool's gold, because that's the worst thing you can do to a human being. But I'll be back. I'll gladly come back. I know we have some other topics that we would love to touch.
Got to get into it.
And I'll be back.
You can help us get more money for the coffers.
You never know. You never
With
know.
that, folks, don't forget, this is a call-in program. Don't be intimidated. I ain't gonna bite your head off, neither Praveen. So next week, have your questions ready, call in. We're going to announce during the week who our guest is going to be. Thank you once again for joining in. And remember, stay positive, get vaccinated, do the right thing so we can help St. Martin get back to where we need to be.
From my end, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure and an honor to have respected MP with us. Once again, keep wearing your masks and maintaining your social distancing. If you're not vaccinated, consider doing the research and get vaccinated so we can get back to our glory days as soon as possible. Have a good weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you another week, same time, same day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.